Good morning, everybody. My name is Brian Powell. I am the Senior Director of Development here at the college and a proud graduate of the class of 2003. Welcome to the Carnegie Alumni Center at Grove City College, and we're excited to have, obviously, our grad students as part of the Leadership Summit. We also have some undergraduate students from the Winklevoss School of Business. We have some mentees from our Alumni Mentor Program, some Crimson and White Society Advancement Office ambassadors, local business leaders. We're just thrilled to have everybody here this morning. And of course, grateful for Christy and the team and all of the exciting work, not only for our MBA program, but for the other graduate programs here at Grove City College as well. Soon to be in 2025, our Master's in Economics as well. Really excited about that. Just a quick word before I introduce our speakers. This building that we're in, the Carnegie Alumni Center, was a gift from Andrew Carnegie in 1900. A lot of great history here. It's the second oldest building on our campus. It was originally a library, a gymnasium, auditorium, and it served in many, many different ways over the years, including it served for music classes and lessons, ROTC, and more recently, thanks to a major renovation in 2009, our alumni office, our development office, and our marketing office here at the college. So just quick show of hands for those in this room that were able to be a part of yesterday's special ceremony. It's okay, nobody's deducted points if you're in the grad student class. Well, okay, I can't say that for sure. What an awesome celebration. So glad that some of you were able to be a part of that. We do have a few kind of special takeaways from our time here this morning. Thanks to the Winklevoss family, we have copies of the Bitcoin Billionaire. We have a copy for everybody that's here today. So please, after the end of their time, make sure you come up and grab one of those. And we also have a really special commemorative challenge coins. And we want to make sure that our grad students have the opportunity to get those. It's a great way to commemorate the first Bitcoin gift to Grove City College, the first Bitcoin-backed business school, we think, in the world. And also a great reminder for us as we think about ways that we do and can and should represent and carry forward and strengthen the brand of Grove City College as we move forward. So I'm truly just blessed, honored. I've been inspired, humbled to have had the chance to spend some time yesterday with the Winklevoss family. And I'd love to have Howard come up and share a few introductory. Now I say a few, buckle up, because I know we're here to hear from Cameron and Tyler as well, and they'll be here shortly. So can you please join me with a warm welcome for Howard Winklevoss?
Thank you. So probably wouldn't surprise you that the boys are on a call with their 500 employees. They had a presentation they had to make this morning, so they're on their way. They should be here in a few minutes. But I just wanted to say a couple of things on the Bitcoin front. A lot of people say, well, Bitcoin's up to $75,000, so I mean, I really don't want to put $75,000. I don't have $75,000 to put in. The Bitcoins is divisible into 1 million parts. So if you divide 75,000 by a million, you get 7.5 cents for 1 Satoshi, and that's a little tiny piece of the Bitcoin. So if you want to put $1,000 into Bitcoin, you can buy, I don't know, 7 cents into $1,000. I can't do that math, but you can buy some portion of Bitcoin, which is kind of interesting. A lot of people aren't aware of that. The boys actually started the Gemini exchange about 10 years ago. And they did it in New York. They wanted to be regulated. They've since had second thoughts about that because some of their Bitcoins were put into an organization that got tied up with FTX. They got all their money back. It's the only one I know that got messed up with FTX, but they got all their money back. But Letitia James said, you're bad boys. You have a $50 million penalty. She gave them a $50 fine and then took the credit for getting the money back. I mean, you can't believe some of the stuff that goes on. But there's a new day here with our new administration. I'm so proud that 80% of the Grove City kids voted for Trump. I mean, in a straw vote, I think it was. I'm not sure whether straw vote or whatever. We need to work on those 20%, but we'll bring them on board. We love them. We love them all. But one of the fascinating things I found out about I'm an actuary, so I kind of like the mathematics of the whole Bitcoin thing, and I did a deep dive into how it works. I don't understand every inch of it, but I understand a lot of it. And I also don't think it's important to necessarily understand Bitcoin. I mean, a lot of us don't understand exactly how email works, but we use it every day and we trust it, pretty much trust it. Every once in a while we get hacked. But Bitcoin can be the same thing. You don't really need to understand how it works to eventually use it. And right now it's a little hard to use, but it'll get easier and easier. So have faith in that. But the part of the cryptography that I enjoyed was the so-called hashing function. A hashing function is quite interesting. It wasn't invented by Satoshi, but it was invented by cryptographers back in the 70s. And a hashing function is, if you put anything into a hashing function, like your name, you'll get back 256 zeros and ones. And that is, by the way, that's the address of a Bitcoin address, 256 zeros and ones. And so you can put a book into the hashing function and get back an address, which then goes on the blockchain, and you can prove that you wrote that book, or you had that song, or you had that invention unequivocally. I mean, it's a pretty interesting concept. Or you own that house, or I own this car. Yeah, you know, get it on the blockchain. But the hashing function is, I think, quite amazing that that Satoshi used that as a primary component of the Bitcoin. And you have to amazing, I mean, how wealthy, not wealthy, he's very wealthy, how smart it was Satoshi or this group of people that started this thing. They were so smart, bringing politics together and mathematics together, and the idea of sound money, which means we could have money without the government being involved. How wonderful is that? By consensus, I mean, pretty amazing. And the Austrian economists kind of looked for that one piece of the puzzle, because they solved a lot of things, but they hadn't solved the way to deal with money without the government involved. Now we got a path forward on that, which is pretty amazing. So Bitcoin is here to stay. A lot of people, Elizabeth Warren, don't like it. And what's tragic about that is that they're pushing all the brains offshore. My boys have opened up a company in Singapore and England, and you know they're going around the world. We want the brain. We want the brains in the United States, not in these various islands and various countries around the world. And that's going to change. Larry Gensler, the head of the SEC, I think he's gone now. We almost got rid of Elizabeth Warren, but not quite. The guy that she's running against is fabulous. I mean, Navy SEAL. Anybody ever read Make Your Bed, Navy SEAL book? Oh my God, you got to read it. It's only 100 pages, but it's about the president of the University of Texas wrote a book on. Well, he was a Navy SEAL, but you've got to read that book. It's an amazing book and what the SEALs do. Why did I bring the SEALs up? I'm losing my track of. I see my son's out here now. Help! I'm in trouble, guys. I just took a hard right-hand turn and I don't know where I am. That's what happens when you get over age 80. You can get away with that. If these guys do that, yeah, they got problems. But I'd like to introduce you to Cameron Tyler. I don't know which one's which, but one of them's Cameron. I think the first one's Cameron and the second one's Tyler. I'm just kidding. All right. Thank you guys. Yeah, thank you. All right. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thanks for the intro, Dad. So we thought it'd be fun to do more of an AMA style format and just answer whatever questions people have and go from there. We've been in crypto. We first got into Bitcoin in 2012, and so we've been in the space, which back then it was only really Bitcoin, for about 12 years. Time flies, and it still feels like it's very, very early. So there's still tons of opportunity, and we're excited about. But it's a passion for us, and it's our mission, and we love talking about it. And I'm wearing my Bitcoin orange shirt. I'm hoping to orange pill at least a few of you. But I'm sure there's some believers in here. So let's get started. I don't know if Tyler, you want to add anything?
we were just talking to our company about the great opportunity that is in front of us because of what happened on Tuesday. There's a saying that, you may not be interested in politics, but politics is interested in you. And unfortunately, the government got really interested in crypto and over-regulating, and regulation through enforcement by suing a lot of actors. So it looks like with this regime change, the government will get out of the way and we can finally build. We've spent so much money on lawyers and compliance the last 10 years, at least $100 million. We've lost, last year alone, we lost something like 7 or 8 bank accounts. One bank seized our customer funds with no advance notice for no reason whatsoever. And we're the good guys. We spent millions of dollars becoming a New York trust company under New York banking law in 2014, 2015. So if this is how they're treating us, how are they actually treating the startup with no track record who wants to build a crypto startup in a dorm room in Grove City or their parents' garage? And we know the history of startups, all the best startups started with really humble beginnings, right? They started in a dorm room, whether it's at Harvard or Stanford or Grove City. They started in garages. This is the story of our best companies that drive our economy. And so if you have to, if creating a startup is raising $10 million that then goes to lawyers to get a license just to get to the starting line, what chance do you have? And I actually came across an economic study back at business school a little while back, but it was an index on how long it took to incorporate a company in a country. So in America, you can go online in like 10 minutes, create an LLC or a company and put your credit card in. It's, there's services to do that. So you basically create your startup company in like 30 minutes, let's say. The other extreme is Haiti. The average time it takes to create a company is 256 days. So that puts it in perspective. But that has been happening to crypto and people who want to build in crypto. And hopefully on Tuesday, we now have a landscape where the crypto winner of this hellscape, this regulatory attack, is going to be moved out of the way, where we can actually start building, where we're not fighting with our hands tied behind our back, running with a parachute on, running with lead shoes on. You name the metaphor, like that's been happening to us. So we're really excited about this opportunity, and we sent that message to our company. We at least have a 2-year window to build before something can change, it's looking like. So we're really excited about that opportunity. It's time to build, and it's time to build fast. But we can open to questions and have more of a free format, AMA style, because we don't want to guess what you guys want to talk about or hear about. We want to hear it from you. Might be easier to just take it out. Oh.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you bring up a great threat to, currency digital. I don't really know much about, crypto. Threat to the federal government itself, which, if I was investing in cryptocurrency, I'd be concerned about that. What's your perspective on, is there a hope, for, legally, for protection for cryptocurrency? But, if you can just kind of shed some lights on, what's the threat here? But an administration being able to, to talk, well, administrations come and go, and so.
So the coast has always been clear for Bitcoin. Not even this antagonistic regulatory state or SEC has tried to say it's anything more than a commodity. And commodity, if it's a commodity, it's like gold, and it's not that regulated. The only thing they regulate on gold really is the derivatives on top of it. So, and I think pretty much Ether has that classification, even in this environment. And so you're always going to be pretty safe with those two. And you can do self-custody. There's products like the Ledger Wallet where you can self-custody your Bitcoin in your own hardware wallet. And so unless the government is knocking down your door and raiding your house and stealing your Ledger wallet with your Bitcoin, you should be good. You can also create a brain wallet and store it in your head. That's a little more advanced because, your memory and whatnot. But that is the promise of Bitcoin and crypto, is the separation of money and state. And no matter what happens, I guess it's a big statement, but it looks like Bitcoin and Ether have always been in the clear. And with this new government in place, we can get federal legislation that really has a demarcation between what's a commodity, crypto, and what's a security. This current SEC has said everything's a security except for basically Bitcoin. And so if you're a company like Gemini that's an exchange that helps people trade, store, buy, sell, and trade cryptos, then basically 98 out of the 100 of cryptos you support is a security. You need to come in and register with us, and if you don't, we're going to sue you. So hopefully they've never written a rule, but it's just anything outside of Bitcoin and Ether. So hopefully we'll get a lot more clarity on this is the security bucket, this is the commodity bucket, and this is also how something can start as security and become a commodity over time. There is maybe a decent argument that something like Ether started as a security, but over time it became sufficiently decentralized. It's not controlled by one party or foundation or one company, and so ultimately it made that bridge from being a security and is a commodity. So there could be a future where you could start a crypto and it could be a security and you sell it and whatnot, but then it grows and becomes sufficiently decentralized where it is then safe and it's a commodity.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything more to add other than Bitcoin and Ether ETFs have actually been in the wild for almost a year now. And the SEC fought to prevent those, and they lost actually in, I think, the second district court. And so they had to let them through. So those, I think, now that they're out in the wild, I think it's impossible to sort of roll that back. So if you're concerned, I think Bitcoin and Ether definitely fall into the commodity bucket. It's really the ambiguity around the classification of other tokens further out in the spectrum that the SEC has been abusing that lack of clarity and that ambiguity, and then using it to file lawsuits in bad faith against actors in the space. So, but Bitcoin, the way we think about that is we analogize it to digital gold, and gold is a commodity, and commodities are not regulated at the spot level. And Bitcoin, I think, has held that classification since over a decade now. So it's well-established law, and I think even the SEC concedes that Bitcoin is a commodity and Ether is a commodity. And so they're not going to overreach in there. The key is now getting legislation where we remove all the other ambiguity and create those sort of the bucket for security tokens and the bucket for commodity tokens.
So we should also just talk about why Bitcoin is valuable, or why we think it is. And if you look at the money characteristics of Bitcoin, it matches gold across the board or does better. So it's more portable than gold because you can send it like an email. It's more divisible than gold. It's easier to divide it. There's actually 100 million. You can get 100 million Bitcoin pieces in one Bitcoin. And it's truly scarce. Gold is scarce, but the supply of Bitcoin is actually fixed at 21 million. There will never be more than 21 million Bitcoin ever in existence. Whereas gold, like, we're still finding more gold reserves. And as the price of gold goes up, it makes mining gold more profitable. So the supply of gold is actually increasing ever so slowly. And there's actually gold on asteroids. So if Elon gets up there and starts mining asteroids or whatnot, everything that we think is precious metals on Earth may not be that precious in the universe. And there's good evidence of that. So if we hold that gold has value and that it's sound money because it doesn't have the interference of the government, it has that separation of money and state, then we should understand why we think gold is so valuable. And you can go down these different characteristics of scarcity, durability, portability, and whatnot. I think there's like 8 or 9 characteristics of money that make gold valuable and why we care about gold being valuable. And then you line up Bitcoin next to it, and it's clear that it's as good or better. It's gold 2.0. It's all of the gold principles encoded digitally onto to money. And the community around Bitcoin is very passionate about this decentralization. That is the superpower that you really can't stop it. To stop Bitcoin, you'd have to stop the internet. You'd literally have to cut it and become North Korea. So as much as the regulators want to attack Bitcoin or stop it, then they would have to stop the internet. They'd have to basically stop data packets moving back and forth. And then you'd lose everything else, right? You'd lose Amazon, Facebook, Netflix. It's just too big of a risk. So that is very much the ideology of Bitcoin, this sovereign money, libertarian money that's a separation of money and state, very much like the principles that are taught at this school by many of the economics professors and a lot of the famous professors like Hans Sennholz, who my dad studied under. And that's how a lot of these ideas trickled through osmosis to myself and Cameron. And when we discovered Bitcoin, we're like, oh, that's really interesting. That's very cool. And we got it. We both studied economics at Harvard, but we didn't come across these Austrian economic theories in schools of thought. But we did in our household because our father went to Grove City and studied under Hans Sennholz, who was a professor here of that school. So yeah, that's kind of like the history, the arc of Bitcoin and why it's super special. And decentralization it's a spectrum. Bitcoin being the most extreme, the hardest for the government to confiscate, the hardest for the government to stop. There's even a blockchain on a satellite in space right now. So you'd have to grab that too to end Bitcoin. And then there's ones that are more centralized, and it's a bit of a trade-off. But Bitcoin's very safe in that sense, and then there's a whole range.
So Bitcoin, very hard to regulate, but the derivatives of cryptocurrency are more regulatory. I'm just kind of ignorant on this. What is the scale of the derivative market for? And then follow-up question, just curious if you've seen in this work towards using like tokenizing bonds for like municipalities or for anyone to or even businesses to raise money to create tokens instead of traditional bonds.
Yeah. So the first question is the derivatives market on top of Bitcoin is huge, and usually even in gold, the derivatives market is usually 10x larger than the underlying spot. You can look at oil, you can look at gold. The price really isn't set in the oil spot market. It's set at the CME, let's say, on gold futures or oil futures. So the Bitcoin market has a larger futures market than the spot, but it's all happening offshore because there's no path to be regulated in the US in this CFTC. And so it should be huge, but it's not because it's been ice cold, the regulatory landscape in terms of getting approvals. And just to give you an idea of how sort of I would call antagonistic the current CFTC is to new ideas, is that they actually tried to ban prediction markets for this election, like Polymarket and Kalshi. And I think everyone here who was trying to understand what was going to happen probably was looking at the prediction markets. And the prediction markets, and you notice that they got everything right. They were the most right and the most early. And who got it wrong? Pollsters. Iowa Seltzer poll, completely wrong, right? So any manipulation that's happening is actually happening in these polls where the data, who knows what's happening, how they're crunching it. It's a total black box, and you're just going by their expert reputation. as opposed to prediction markets where people have skin in the game, and they're truth machines. And they were right, and they proved their validity. And so the current CFTC actually tried to ban them for this election. And these startups fought them and won. Gemini, we actually wrote a letter in support of prediction markets and the power of markets, and skin in the game, and how they were going to be the most accurate and the most truthful. And so it's been really hard to get things done in the US environment, including getting a license to be a regulated derivatives exchange. We actually have a derivatives exchange offshore, and that's where all of the action's happening right now. And Polymarket, which got the election right, is actually banned in the US. Only non-US customers can actually place bets there, and they still got it right. And how much more right would they get it if people in the US could place bets or predictions on their own elections of which they're going to be governed? And so hopefully that's all changing very soon, that we can get a CFTC that's very pro-crypto, very pro-innovation. Certainly Gemini would be interested in getting a licensed exchange to be able to provide not just spot Bitcoin in the US, but Bitcoin futures and perpetuals in the US as well.
Cool. Next question. Oh, what was the second question? Oh, yeah, there's definitely efforts to tokenize bonds and securities and real world assets, but I think that it hasn't really gone anywhere because the SEC's just made it like not tenable. But I think in the future, there's going to be tons of assets that, real world assets or securities or bonds that are tokenized and do trade. And I think that you could probably embed a lot of like the compliance elements of accredited investors into and tokenize that aspect to reduce a lot of the paperwork overhead that accompanies these traditional instruments. So I think the more you can put into a smart contract and code, the less friction it is to trade these instruments. So I do think they're going to come about. I think they've just been stalled because there's just been no forward progress dealing with the SEC. But there's definitely a lot of efforts focused on the tokenization of assets, whether they're, it's real estate or securities or other pieces. So I think there's a bright future there, but I think it's probably in the slower category because it does fall under the SEC, and the regulatory regime there is just much more. There's just tons more overhead, as you can imagine. So I think that there were bills that were being put forth, and none of them were, I think, particularly great. So I think there's going to be a new effort. I don't think it's materialized yet, but I think with control of the House and the Senate, the Republicans have, that we're going to get the right legislation that's thoughtful. We use the concept of thoughtful regulation that balances consumer investor protection with innovation. And unfortunately, a lot of the regulation that we see these days is all about stifling innovation and protecting the consumer. But in many ways, they often get it wrong. The SEC's war on crypto made things like the FTX exchange possible because there wasn't a golden path for companies in the US to build at the pace of crypto. People said, well, I can't get these tokens or these assets or these instruments at Gemini, so I'm going to go to FTX, offshore, unregulated, where I can. And then, of course, that creates a setup for a really bad situation and an unprecedented, $20 billion fraud. So because the regulators were so slow, they actually pushed people into the arms of these really bad actors. And so a lot of times regulators, they get it wrong because they don't move fast enough. And that creates a real issue because in this day and age, people they're going to figure it out. They're going to go to FTX, they're going to go offshore, and they're going to get these assets, and you push them into these spaces. The same thing happened with the music industry. People were pushed into pirating music. They didn't want to steal music. But when you say, hey, here's a CD with one good song and, it costs $20 in the 90s when that was real money, it's probably $200 today. People are just going to go do that, and they didn't want to do that. And what we've seen is that if you price things reasonably and you create a golden path, frictionless, people will pay, and they don't want to pirate music. And I think people don't want to leave U.S. companies and go offshore and take unnecessary risk and all that counterparty risk associated with it. And that falls squarely on the SEC. And what they did, their war on crypto, it didn't just hurt the companies, it hurt consumers. And so people lost a lot of money and were caught in those bankruptcies. So I do think there's a path coming forward. I think legislators will now get to work, and it will hopefully be a balance. But one thing that's unique, at least with respect to commodities, is there is no retail. Commodities are really only regulated by the CFTC at the derivatives on that layer of it. Crypto is a little bit different because there's such a retail component, but other commodities like gold and oil are not regulated on the spot level. So that will be a different change because of the individual nature of this asset and technology. Back.
So you've talked around this a lot, and this is a question to your guys' vision. Effective regulation look like? Nothing is in place. What are you looking for, and what are you?
So, yeah, our view has always been that the most vibrant markets have the right balance of thoughtful regulation, which goes back to the right investor protections, but also, guardrails, not gates, allowing companies to build at the pace of the technology. And I think that is what we need to get right, and which regulation, the last 4 years has been regulation through enforcement. And so they don't tell you what the rules are. They just sue you and say, hey, you violated the rules. It's like not posting the speed limit and then getting pulled over and they say, hey, you broke the speed limit. And you're like, well, it wasn't posted anywhere. I don't know. I've been trying to be responsible. I tried to drive within the spirit of the road, and you won't tell me what the actual rules are. And you have to go to the courthouse and look at traffic ticket violations to reverse engineer what you can and can't do. That's basically the world we've lived in. Oh, and by the way, by driving, you're guilty, now prove your innocence. It's like you work in crypto and you're guilty and now prove your innocence many times over, and often that's not enough. So I think you have to create a situation where companies can almost like a sandbox in some ways, really guardrails, not gates, where they can't say, hey, don't list this asset, but list this asset, and being the arbiters or gatekeepers of financial assets. I think you create a framework. So for example, the New York Stock Exchange, if you want to list your company on the New York Stock Exchange, they don't go to the SEC and say, hey, can we list this company? The SEC gives them a framework, and then if the company meets those guidelines, and so they can do that, they don't have to constantly go back and forth, and you have those frameworks or principles, and I think we need that around crypto, and that's what we've been asking for. We're not asking for a Wild West. In fact, we were, I think, one of the first New York trust companies for crypto, and I think one of 3 that exist. We're sort of gluttons for regulation, gluttons for punishment, if you will. And our ethos has always been ask permission, not forgiveness. And up until now, that strategy has been a tough one because a lot of people have, they ask for forgiveness later. They just go build, and then they try and, make good with the regulators later on, but they're able to build much faster, unencumbered by regulation. And having been a trust company for over a decade or so, I mean, there's a new rule that it feels like every week or 2 or every month, there's some new thing you have to follow or this or that. And the cost of following and tracking all this and hiring people, it would blow your mind how much you do. And I think that it always comes down to this balance. Regulators can get a lot of things right, but they can also get a lot of things wrong. And they're not the ones building the businesses on the front lines. And a lot of times, sometimes you look at things and you're like, I just know that that's not going to actually help. There's, for example, there in the UK, they have these rules, these cooling off rules. So a customer can't sign up. If they sign up, they can't buy crypto for the first 24 hours. It's cooling off because they might have an impulse buy or something like that. And that just creates... So we have to implement that. So if you sign up to us in the UK, we can't let you buy for 24 hours. We have to let you cool your jets. And then we have to put these disclaimers on every page, like this is a risky asset, you could lose everything. And it creates this really bad experience for people. And it creates a setup where it's just a nanny state. And the government's telling you what to do and what assets to buy and when and how. And when you look at the value of Bitcoin, it goes in these 4-year cycles. It's called the bull run, and then there's the bear market, or crypto winter. There's crypto summer, then followed by crypto winter because of the halvening. What happens is the newly minted Bitcoin, the block reward that miners receive every 10 minutes for securing the network, that cuts in half, and that creates these sort of boom and bust cycles. And in the boom, the gains, which can sometimes be 10, 20x change in price to a new price floor, sometimes happens over a period of 14 days. Like that's it. When you look at like the massive seismic shifts in the Bitcoin price or crypto, the market cap of crypto, it happens over a matter of days over these 4-year cycles. And it might feel sometimes like it happens over months or quarters, but because people get excited and they talk about it, but it actually comes down to a matter of days. So when someone wants to buy Bitcoin and you say, no, you can't buy it for a day, that could cost them like serious amounts of value on the upside.
And how do they usually react?
They react by getting mad at us. Like, why?
Or going somewhere else.
Yeah.
Which is unregulated.
They go to somewhere else unregulated with a VPN and they buy what they want when they want, or they go into DeFi and they can do what they want there. Though that's a bit more complicated, and most people may not be that motivated or be that savvy to get into DeFi. But to Tyler's point, they'll go somewhere else or they'll get upset at us, and we're like, we don't make the rules. We think you're responsible. We trust your judgment. So there's all these funny scenarios, and that's just one regulator. And we have regulators all over the world, so we have to design the product in all these ways, and it becomes really complex and challenging. So we want to avoid that as much as possible and allow good experiences, people to understand the risk, but also make good choices for themselves and be responsible. We don't think that crypto's not about being a nanny state. It's about getting the state out of money. And that's what we're trying to do.
Just to build on that, and I'll say a more radical idea, is that I think we really need to rethink all of our regulation and how it works. Right now, the SEC is trying to regulate crypto, but the SEC, this is all New Deal era, 1930s regulators that are trying to regulate the future right now, before the internet, before crypto. I think we need to rethink and re-examine the Patriot Act in KYC and how effective it actually is. Because we go through great lengths to KYC customers, and they still get through. We follow the Patriot Act rubric and whatnot. My favorite one is the identity proof. Early on, we had people answer these multiple choice questions that you've all seen when you do a credit report, like which address is associated with where you've lived. Did you ever own this kind of car? Yes or no? And whatnot. Is this phone number associated with you in the last 10 years? And so what we found is that some users got 5 out of 5 of the questions right. And a lot of people got 4 right, and some people got 3, and some people got none. Who do you think got 5 out of 5 right? Real customers or fraudsters? The fraudsters. The fraudsters know you better than you know you. They actually study for that test. They've stolen your identity. They've completely owned you. And so they pass through these identity checks easily. And then they go smash by. Sometimes they would link up your bank account or someone else's bank account, wire money in or ACH money in, smash by crypto, withdraw Bitcoin off. We can't withdraw Bitcoin back when we realize they're fraudsters, but your bank account that was stolen and attached to that stolen account can pull back the ACH within 90 days. So someone might ACH in $5,000, buy Bitcoin, withdraw it, the fraudsters, and then the person who got their identity stolen, ACH pulls back in 90 days the cash. So the system's not working, and it's incredibly expensive. It's expensive for us, if you look at our salaries for what we pay our employees compared to other startups, the cost of compliance and security is so expensive that our average salary is like 100 or 200 grand more than your average technology startup in our space. And so we've gotten sophisticated in terms of understanding who you are and whatnot and combating fraud, but it's always a battle. The fraudsters are sophisticated. We're in our conference room figuring out how to combat them. They're in their conference room in Eastern Europe or North Korea figuring out how to, get past us. And it's a ton of time and money, and there's got to be a better way. And all these regulators, the SEC was set up to regulate a couple of banks on Wall Street. And the FDA was set up to regulate a couple of big pharma companies. But now everything's being decentralized. Money, biohacking, drones, whatnot. And these regulators, they're almost a century old. And are they effective? Like Cameron said, are they just pissing people off at us and pushing them into VPNs offshore to some exchange that's going to rug them and steal all of their money overnight? Or are they being helpful? And we could write a book on how detrimental the government has been. They've been so stubborn to embrace crypto over the last 10 years. The only people who win are them with their political points or the lawyers that we pay invoices to. So I think we need to have a rethink of, of course we want thoughtful regulation. I think nobody wants money launderers and bad people doing bad things or helping them out. But is what we're doing actually being effective? Is it leading to more innovation, a better experience for the good folks out there? Or is it just kind of gumming up everything?
I think the moral to that story is don't trust people who get a perfect score, right? Okay, next question.
So whenever you're talking about cryptocurrency and mining at scale, talk a little bit about what challenges or interactions you've seen in the world of data centers. Obviously, we have huge right now in Data Alley in Baltimore, and now we're seeing Columbus, Ohio, and just what you think the future of that looks like, whether it's private, public, different partnerships, the challenge.
Yeah, I think it's gonna spur a ton of innovation, both on the energy side and also the compute side. We invested in a company called Crusoe Energy a couple years back, and they were basically capturing stranded natural gas that was in these remote areas that had to be flared in order to get to the oil below the natural gas. And these oil companies were just burning it off, and they said, "Hey, we'll go bring a miner and take your natural gas off of your hands, and it's more green because I think using it to do Bitcoin mining is greener than just burning it into the atmosphere." So they started doing that, and they're now building data centers. And crypto mining uses GPUs, so it's very it's parallel processing. And obviously, those are the same chips used for AI. So they really have been building this compute fabric, whether you want to mine Bitcoin or run AI models. And that is one of, I think, many intersections we're going to see between crypto and AI. And so it's been really exciting to watch their development going from Bitcoin mining, stranded, natural gas, to, we're just a compute layer if you want to do mining or AI or what have you. And they are now building data centers, and energy is a huge thing. And I think that we need to understand like the future of nuclear in this country, and getting more power to push this technology forward. And I think that's what's going to be exciting about the next 4 years is we now will have a path to access, whether it's fossil fuels or look at new nuclear technology. I think there's going to be a huge growth there because the key input to both Bitcoin mining or crypto mining is energy. Do you have access to enough, and is it cost effective? And I think the same is true for AI. And I think they're going to intersect in other ways beyond that. But I think it's going to be a very exciting place to be over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, what's for sure. Oh, another question.
The energy portion of it.
Yeah.
They're looking at electric grid system on that.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's going to require a tremendous amount of energy. If you look at these AI models, it's about the data set, it's about energy, and it's about the large language model itself, right? So energy is a huge input, and they keep throwing more GPUs at the problem, and it keeps getting better and better. Now, whether that will hit a ceiling, but the gains that AI is making seem to be pretty amazing. And I think we need to reset how we think about energy consumption in this country. I think, I don't know if people have come across the Kardashev scale, but it talks about the more energy a civilization consumes, the more evolved it is. And so I don't think we should be afraid of that. We should be looking to obviously clean energy, nuclear resurgence. We're going to need to be using fossil fuels for some time, at least in the short term. But this idea of like, let's be more efficient, let's use less energy, that's not going to fly in the future. That's never going to work. We need to get over that. And energy is a national security issue. Look at what Europe did. They've been deindustrializing and then buying all of their energy from, outsourcing their energy to Russia. And now they're totally tied to them there. And it's a big problem. But yeah, we need to embrace the fact that we're going to have to produce a ton more energy and use a lot of energy. And that's totally okay. And all of the green warriors and all of the ESG and all of that red tape, that's slowing us down. It's not slowing China down. And all these games to offshore your carbon footprint, to look more green, we need to stop playing those games. We need to stop the red tape. We need to accept that we might be consuming orders of magnitude more energy in a very short amount of time. So how are we going to do that effectively, stay competitive with the AI race and rush? How are we going to stay competitive with crypto and hopefully do that in a clean way? I don't think the way to solve this is let's regulate and give everyone an allowance of energy. It's let's let the innovators and builders build and create new sources of energy. We've been looking at nuclear fission reactor companies in 18-wheelers that you can buy. That's the prototype that could power an entire village or city. So I think that the way to solve these problems is through innovation, letting builders build. There's a lot of amazing efforts out there. It's not, counting how much energy you're using in your carbon footprint, and not all those talking points that come out of Davos, I think, are super counterproductive.
Yeah, just to add, I think if you just slap all these regulations on and try and measure how much energy people use, I think that the better path is coming up with better, more efficient sources, harness more solar, get new nuclear technology. I don't think just by micromanaging people's energy consumption, we're not going to move forward with these technologies. And I just don't think it works that well. We saw RFK speak about a month ago, and he really talks about the environment, not climate, because that's sort of the way he thinks about the world, and how he thinks that the divine speaks through the environment, and we should be protecting the environment, not just talking about these numbers and climate and trying to talk about carbon footprints. And I guess I forget who says if you want people to build a ship, don't tell them don't give them a blueprint, but teach them to yearn for the sea. And I think that the micromanaging regulatory layer is really hurting our ability to just find new sources of energy, because I think that our energy consumption has increased and will need to increase dramatically for these technologies. And there are parts of the world that are deindustrializing, which is just not good on many, many levels. So that's our view.
I'm not sure I quite understood the question. Is it like, how do I think Bitcoin as an investment will perform? Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't fund a company with Bitcoin. I don't know, my dad funded the business school with Bitcoin. I'd fund it with fiat. Bitcoin.
But sorry, bring this guy here. Well, we should explain. For context, he gave Bitcoin, and I think he gave Bitcoin about 2 months ago. Bitcoin's worth a lot more today. So his donation, that's why that's the joke with not funding.
Yeah, I mean, we see Bitcoin as a store of value asset. So it's like a family heirloom. Keep it forever and never get rid of it. It's like a Picasso, but much better. Just like your Amazon shares, you probably don't want to sell those. You want to hold on to those. It's really fiat that you would use for commerce and investing. Yeah, I'm not sure that Bitcoin has to be a medium of exchange. I think it can be the foundation for other mediums of exchange built on top of it. There's a Lightning Network. There's stable coins that are pegged to fiat currency. Bitcoin may become a currency, but again, it's a store of value. You could borrow off of it. You could put it into DeFi and whatnot. And I'm not sure that it has to be used as commerce necessarily. But we'll sort of see. But there's other cryptos that people do use more like a currency. It could. I mean, it's your exit from government money, but you could spend other types of cryptocurrencies. But we'll sort of see. The thing with Bitcoin right now is that the decentralization is so important that it's a slow transacting money. And that's why other cryptocurrencies that are more centralized like Solana, Ethereum, layer 2s on top of Ethereum are used more for that money transaction layer. And it's a tough engineering problem. It's a trade-off between being fully decentralized, right, and having quick, fast transactions and high throughput. So far, the Bitcoin community hasn't been willing to get, and I think it's the right call, is give up this decentralization part, because that's the superpower of Bitcoin. Because if it's decentralized, then Bitcoin gets through the Great Firewall of China. Then to stop Bitcoin is to stop the internet. In the future, yeah, maybe it can do all of these things. It can be fast and quick and also decentralized. But currently, it's just been really stuck on that decentralized store of value role, which is huge, and it can underpin and other more currency-like transacting cryptos can be built on top of it, or other cryptos. Over there.
So this is a different, when thinking about the public image, like a portion of the public at least has been influenced by these viral type of like cryptocurrency, drone currency, like Dogecoin, and like just things like that. Would you look at stuff like that as just viral niche, really stop the track from the more serious investments of Bitcoin, or would you look at that and say that's an indication Bitcoin moving investment away from just the Wall Street investment bankers and more to the everyday people?
Yeah, so I think if I understood, like so I wouldn't start with investing in meme coins, if that's what you're asking. So maybe don't start with Mudang, which is a Peso the Penguin. Maybe don't start there. But definitely, I think start with Bitcoin and Ether. Those are the blue chips. I think the meme coins are really interesting. I think it's the market at play. This is all very much an experiment. And I think we should let those experiments run. And money's what the people say it is. So I think that's super powerful. And I've always liked Elon Musk's take on this with Dogecoin, is that fate loves irony. And I think his take is that like fate likes the most entertaining outcome. So maybe Doge does become the global reserve currency. Maybe Mudang does as well. It's probably going to be something more like Bitcoin, but I think it's really interesting to see these experiments play out. And yeah.
So yeah, money in many ways is a consensual hallucination. I didn't make that up, but someone I think said that, and that if you think about it, there's so much of that truth in money, and what is money? And when we found Bitcoin, one of the things we really had to grapple with, like what is money? What does it mean? And a lot of people think money is a green piece of paper, and they got really fixed to that idea, and it's hard to see crypto and Bitcoin, and couldn't get there for many years. But I think the meme coins are an interesting experiment. Who's to say that there can't be different types of money and people can't agree that there's some value there? The mimetic quality is very, very high. It also might say something a little bit about, like, it could be a protest against the current system. You have a system right now where you have to be an accredited investor to invest in a venture company, which means you have to make, I think, $200,000 a year in salary, and or have a net worth of $1 million or more. And so that means that you can't invest in the next big startup, the next Google, unless you have that. And so you have a lot of smart people who might find really cool opportunities and know a lot more than analysts sitting on Wall Street, and they can't actually write a check into these really cool companies. You could start a company and want to bring your friends in, and you might want to do a friends and family round, and they can't invest. And I think Vivek Ramaswamy has a couple of these stories. He started a biotech company and wanted to bring on a couple of his friends who had believed in him and supported him along the way, and they were precluded from writing a check because of the SEC rules. And these people were totally capable, responsible for taking care of their own investment decisions, but the law prevented them. And so the current system is set up where there isn't easy access. There's a lot of friction. There's a lot of barriers to entry. And I think in a lot of ways, things like GameStop are a protest against the system. And it's a protest against these barriers. And you see these hedge funds, they're shorting companies that are completely helpless in the middle of COVID and just pounding them. These companies like GameStop employ 10,000 plus people, I think. And people are like, we've had enough. Like, this is not cool. And so I think there's some of that energy in the meme coins. It's like, hey, we're going to invest in what we like and what we want. We're going to play the games we want to play. We like AMC. We like going to the movies. We like playing video games. Like, stop trying to take away like the few things that we have that we really like. So I think could be some of that, but it's also a cool experiment, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, and remember in GameStop, Wall Street bets got stopped out. So how did that happen? These people are going long GameStop. Who called the clearinghouse and told Robinhood we're not going to clear these trades, right? Who owns the clearinghouse? Well, if you dig in the internet, it's like 200 amorphous Wall Street institutions that all co-control this clearinghouse. Someone made a call to someone who made a call to Robinhood and said, stop this. You can't do that to a blockchain, right? So that's very much, this is the protest. It's saying, okay, you're going to stop us out. And, in 2008, it was too big to fail. In 2020 is too small to win, right? And so people said, I'm done with that. I'm exiting. I'm going Galt. Let's go to meme coins, blockchains, NFTs, whatnot, because you can't stop that out, right? And so I think there's something beautiful about that, and it's very much like Cameron said. I think it's a protest. It's irreverent. It's the people's money. We got this.
And just one more thing on that point. One criticism people say about Bitcoin is, it's all speculation, as if speculation is necessarily a bad thing in the 0 to 1 of an emergent store of value that has grown organically over the past decade into about $1 trillion worth of market cap. Nobody was pushed into buying Bitcoin. Everybody who bought Bitcoin did it voluntarily. There was no state pressure to do that. In fact, it was often the exact opposite, where they were getting all these signals to not invest in, or being told that don't do that. And for an asset to become an emergent store of value basically overnight peacefully with no coercion, people buying voluntarily, it can't be overstated how incredible and profound that is. And there is some speculation there, of course, because this is a fixed asset. There's a limited supply. There's 21 million Bitcoin. There's, I think, 46 million millionaires around the globe, and they won't, they won't have a single Bitcoin, because if there's only 21 million, and the price will go up. So there's a fixed supply, and there is a benefit to being in there early. And I think of the gold rush, the 49ers, that helped settle the West. That speculative drive across the country, built towns along the way. It built railroad, all this infrastructure, and it built, was a huge driver for building the West Coast, and pushing people across the country. So I think speculation is a good thing. And I think it can be an incredibly powerful way to build new technologies. It's that carrot for the flywheel. So yeah, it'll be fun to see where the meme coins go. But thanks for the question.
Sure.
Yeah, so we can talk a little bit about like from an perspective, 75,000 seems really high. Like it's, you have all these other, and that might be overwhelming because it's like the endless.
So our view is that Bitcoin's still very cheap. If you take the viewpoint that we do, which is that Bitcoin is digital gold, and if you look at the market cap of gold, let's say it's somewhere around 10 trillion. You do the math, and we actually wrote a piece in I think 2020. That we thought the price of Bitcoin conservatively should be $500,000 a Bitcoin. And we did that by just taking the amount of Bitcoin and what price does Bitcoin need to be if it equals the market cap of gold? And at the time, the market cap of gold, we calculated about $500,000 for Bitcoin. That's since been revised upward, and I think there's a little bit, everybody kind of comes in with bolder predictions, and now I think Michael Saylor's is it 21 million of Bitcoin? Yeah, in the next probably 2 decades or so, and he could be right. But I think that if you use the market cap of gold as a benchmark, and you believe that Bitcoin is a future store of value, then I think it's easy to get there to say Bitcoin's got to be worth at least as much as gold, but maybe a lot more because it's way more portable, it's way more divisible, it's easier to store, and so I think that I think that that's a very conservative case. So if you look at $75,000 Bitcoin today and you believe this asset could be worth $500 to $1 million per coin, you're looking at a 10, 20x from current prices, and you could say that is obvious in one way. Like I think Bitcoin last decade was the most obvious investment hiding in plain sight, as Peter Thiel would say. And I think that will be true for the next decade. It's obvious, it's there, it's out in the open, and yet you're going to see tons of people think their way out of it, tons of conventional thinking, which is in abundance, and people are just going to miss it. But the interesting thing about the last decade as well, other than Bitcoin being the best investment, is FANG. Big tech companies were also incredible investments, and they were also incredibly obvious on some level, and they were out there hiding in plain sight. And I think what happens is a lot of times people, they overthink it, or they have financial advisors who need to sort of prove their value and their worth, and they say, well, if I just tell you to buy Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, and Facebook or Meta, I'm not, you could do that on your own, and you can. But if I tell you all these, other stocks and to do this and sell here and whatever, and not just, hey, build a common sense HODL portfolio, then you might just not use me and fire me. And I think Bitcoin is one of those investments. And 10 years from now, we'll look back and say, it looks so cheap at 75,000. How could I not get there? And so it's one of those obvious things that a lot of people will not do, or they'll wait. And there's a saying in Bitcoin: you get the price you deserve. And if you overthink it and you wait too long, you're just going to get that worse price. Now, look, you probably, nobody wants to buy at the top. So the way to avoid that is just buy incrementally every day or every week, or dollar cost average in. But I think that there might be more alpha in other parts of crypto, but I think that you don't want to miss your macros, your key vitamins, and you want to start with Bitcoin and Ethereum. If you don't have those in your portfolio, you're missing the foundational pieces of the future of money and the future of the decentralized internet. Once you have those two, whatever sizing you want, then I think you can just have more fun. You've got your Vegas bucket over here, and you play with maybe some meme coins, or you get more experimental. But I feel that, look, in 2020, when we wrote this piece on the prediction of $500,000 Bitcoin, the price of Bitcoin, I think, was $12,000. That was 4 years ago. We wrote about that, and we're here 4 years later, and it's 76,000. So you guys can do the math. And I think we're at least from our vantage point, it feels like this market is actually still pretty sleepy and still pretty quiet. The price is going up because I think BlackRock had $1 billion flow into their ETF yesterday. And it's, you're just having people just accumulating every day. And some of these accumulators are big, pension funds and big funds who are, just buying it and realize, like, we need to have 1%, 2%, 3% exposure to this asset. Otherwise, we're not doing our job. We're going to feel like we missed a key part of our portfolio. And when you take, $100 billion, $200 billion fund, 1 or 2%, 5% of that fund, that's a ton of new capital into Bitcoin that wasn't there last time. And this cycle, we have ETFs. So all of the ETF money was on the sidelines, and a lot of that money can't come to a company like Gemini and open up an account and buy Bitcoin because they're stuck in the retirement accounts and that infrastructure and plumbing. And now, as of about a year ago, you can now buy an ETF share which owns Bitcoin that's custodied at a place like Gemini or Coinbase, and so all of that capital that just couldn't access it for whatever reason structurally, and maybe they really wanted to, can now access Bitcoin. And we've never been in a cycle where traditional finance had the ability, was also able to access Bitcoin and accumulate. And as the saying goes, people, they buy ETFs. They don't sell them. They just buy, you set and forget, or you buy and hold. And so even though I think there's been a couple of moments of volatility over the past year, the ETF outflows haven't been very big because people generally don't sign up and say, oh, well, I'm just going to get out of this ETF that I bought, because I think the mentality and the way people think about it is like, I'm buying this for the long term, and I understand it's going to go up and down. And so it's actually really sticky, good capital that's now in Bitcoin and Ethereum to a large extent. So I think that was a long answer to a simple question. But I think that we always say, start with Bitcoin, get comfortable. It's one of these assets where you want to experience it. It's at some point, it's better to experience even with a little bit than us trying to explain it to you. Just like email, you experience it. You don't need someone to explain how it all works. Ethereum is super exciting, decentralized compute, virtual machine, and then Solana is also another Ethereum variant. Those are sort of the big three, and then you can venture outside of that. But these are obvious, well sort of talked about investments that many people will miss, and I think like the last decade, they'll be the best performing asset of the next decade as well. So,
great. I think that's it.
This is like the here, and they're like, oh, shoot. Thank you. Good stuff, wasn't it? Okay, so I was, yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you. I was told that these gentlemen, who again graciously gave up part of their trip, I mean, they were not meant to be here, and they graciously said, yeah, we'll do this. So just thank you so much. They have to be somewhere else. So I'm not doing this to you. I was told I have to interrupt them because we want to give them an opportunity to eat. The patio out there is quite nice. I think the weather's okay. So grab some food and go network with each other and enjoy each other. But let me take just a moment to first give these guys, I tell all you guys, and you've all heard this, I'm a terrible date. I never pay you guys, ever. So here's a gift. Here's a gift. And we've got one for each of you. Thank you very much for your help. Thank you. Appreciate that. So it's not much, but it's what we got, and we got food. So let me do a quick blessing. Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys. Let me do a quick blessing, and then please go enjoy food and each other. Thank you. If you can bow your head, Lord, thank you for each of the speakers that we've been privileged to hear this morning. Thank you for the weather that you've provided, those who have traveled here, and we ask that you grant each person safe travels this weekend. Thank you for the food that has been carefully prepared for us. Thank you for those who have prepared it and those who will now benefit from it. May your lunchtime conversations be productive, and above all, may we honor you with our words and our deeds. In the name of Jesus, amen.